Hi, Christian, and let's go.
Hello.
So I guess Karsten is grabbing his coffee, but the plan was to start around 5 past anyway. Take it easy.
Okay, then we can do an audio test in the meantime. Hello.
Yes, go.
Hi. How it works.
Marco, I've added an update to the slides. I don't know if that works. If not, I can work with the old ones too.
It should. I just got the mail. Yeah, approving should mean of writing. Done. And I'll force a refresh on Miteco just to be sure. Okay, Miteco has both version 0 and 1, but the latest version 1 is available to share. Sure. Thanks for taking notes, Christian. I'll try to help out.
Yeah, I can't promise to take them up till the end because I'm in a 2-day workshop and might have to leave a bit earlier. But at least for the first part, I can help there.
No worries, and thanks again. Karsten, just checking, are you on keyboard?
I am.
Cool. Then I think it's safe to start. So everyone, this is the core working group interim meeting. This is Marco, co-chairs are Karsten and Jaime. People at this meeting right now should be familiar with the Note 12 that do apply as usual. It's about the IPR to be disclosed or otherwise refrain from engaging in technical discussion, and about our code of conduct, so be nice and professional with one another. And the agenda for today is pretty packed. I think at least half of the topics were proposed by ESCO, and we just did some reshuffling and added more topics. So we start with Christian with an overview of concepts from the transport indication document, as also requested in Dublin. Then the next topic was from ESCO, I think a question mostly for Karsten on the status for an upcoming working group last call on Group Combis. And yeah, just for information, we are just going to advertise the new intended status for DTLS LPN that is already part of the latest published version. Then ESCO proposed a discussion on new resource type that also continue on the list today, so we can take over from there. The draft from ESCO and Thomas on fixing the registration procedure for content formats. The use of the core wiki, that was also ESCO raised up some time ago. And finally, core CLAR. We have a new version today. Probably something more can be, not sure. Does anyone want to propose any more topics or an agenda bashing? Okay, I remember Thomas should be able to join at 5 CT or so. So if we finish what we have before Thomas and ESCO draft before 5, we can move up some of the late topics in case. Okay, then we can start with transport indication.
Wrong button.
So I guess you drive the slides yourself, right?
Yes.
Okay. Oh, and
But
the link to the notes are in the chat for those who are not there.
So, transport indication. At IETF 121, a point raised was lots of questions are asked here, and to be frank, I don't understand any of them. The point of talking about this today is to change that about the understanding so that we can go on to the answering questions part. For brief recap, what is transport indication about? It's kind of two things. One is that how we advertise when there is a connection, that there are different transports that might be used for requesting that resource. But somewhat underlying that is the question of why do we have to have co-op plus something schemes in the first place? And when that was a choice made basically back in RC 8232. Please don't let me make the numbers swapped again. About that's the way we can realize it, but the discussion with the larger IETF led to that. That's probably not the ideal version, but it's the best we can do now. So let's come up with something better before we do something more. I won't talk much about how they can be discovered, automatically exceeding what we need for the other part, and focus on the discovery and the path forward for co-op plus something schemes. So how do we do the simple part of advertising other transports? What has been stable in this document for quite some time is that we treat any other transport just as we would treat a proxy. That's just a different co-op endpoint to which requests can be directed, as long as their URIs are the ones that the client indicates it wants to interact with. And because of the way how proxies work, that proxy can forward them. If it so happens that that proxy is physically on the same machine as the actual resources, all the better, because that's the typical case, and that's the case which is easy to implement by almost just discarding the proxy scheme option for devices that decide to work that way. because we are working in a hypermedia environment, we are using links to express that. So there's a link from the current resource, from the root resource of some server with the relation has proxy onto the TCP version of the same endpoint. And that has been stable in this document for quite some while. The harder part, where does, hello, next slide, please. And I do realize that it's saying next slide, please, doesn't do anything. Hello, can you still hear me?
Yes, Christian.
Okay, I just can't switch.
Still looks like you have control.
So I take it away from you and pass it back to you. Does it work now?
Now we don't hear you.
And now we don't see you.
Get worse.
Yeah, you must be rejoining.
Yeah.
Now it works without even rejoining. Okay, so curl plus TCP. Why did we need that in the first place? And more importantly, why did HTTP not do it? Because HTTP2 was published way before curl over TCP. And now there's HTTP3, which works with quick even, so it's also has this TCP and UDP side. And there are really a bunch of reasons. Like HTTP can just have a connection and switch protocols, at least between 1 and 2. There is no. It's okay to send a few more bytes every request because it's half a kilobyte of headers anyway. It's easier because most of the connections run over TLS anyway, where there are mechanisms applicable. And really, the expectation is that an HTTP server will always have like the baseline, which is an expectation that in co-op we cannot fulfill because the co-op server might be a constrained device, and that might, for example, have only co-op over SMS, but not co-op over something else. Most importantly, though, in HTTP, there is now a way to do it that I would call kind of the proper way, and had it been around, probably would have been the way that we would have used back in the co-op over TCP days, that is SVCP records. Now, for those not familiar with RFC 9460, I'll show examples. And those are like two, I should have put more space in there. Those are two lines. One was requested for a service bar on port 1234 on the host example.com, on the hostname example.com. And the other was requested for HTTPS on the host example.com. Those are different records, but they follow the same style. And that's what they fundamentally do is that for something that is being requested, the application does not look up an A or quad A record, but it looks up a service binding record. And that service binding record for any particular service, possibly even on an off port, expresses that there is a service binding there, that's this SVCP or HTTPS, that has some priority, which even allows some load balancing and failover, that gives a host name that should be resolved for an A or quad A record, and has a few additional details that describe that. Just kind of on a performance note, when a DNS resolver receives that this is happening and recognizes that SVCP or HTTPS are records, they can already serve the A or quad A record that goes with that. So DNS takes care of this kind of working well. There are a few details that I'd like to highlight here that are, for example, this bar service uses the generic SVCP record. There's one record type that's SVCP, that's kind of that you can use for any service that has an underscore name registered. And that's the same record type used for a lot of services. There is the option to have so-called SVCP style resource records. And HTTPS is the kind of the currently only example of that. It's kind of an optimization. allocates a new DNS RR for a particular protocol, and in trade saves you from having to look up _HTTPS for every case, which in particular makes it easier to implement wildcard records. And it's a bit less information on the wire, but I don't know whether that's the ultimate point here. So that's one variability in which we could have in there. Then there are items that are put into the details. So the port is kind of nice because it allows you to use a URI with the default port and then still have the traffic go to a different port that might be more efficient. 6LoWPAN people might already be aware that port 63636 compresses particularly well on 6LoWPAN. So that's a reason why you might go for an off port. The other might be that you're running a service on a Unix machine, even if you're not root. Then there is information about the ALPN in the second example, which indicates which precise protocol should really be chosen here. So yes, we know from the alt3.example which host name, which A or quad A record to use, and we know the port. But this also tells us the transport version that can be used in here. And there can be, for example, and there can be other things. For example, this ECH here on the top record is for an encrypted client hello, which is influencing how the TLS connection is established. So that's SVCP in general. Of course, in our constrained devices, we don't always use DNS. Because CoAP explicitly says that whatever is in the authority part of the URI is just passed on to the system's resolving mechanism. But that doesn't mean that the system's resolving mechanism needs to be, pardon my word, stupid. So sure, there are mechanisms that cannot provide the additional information that an SVCP record provides. For example, etc hosts can't even identify the interface identifier through which this might go out. But I don't think that etc hosts is necessarily the one thing that we have to keep in mind here. And that's one of the questions that I did not ask at IETF 121, maybe that we should consider at some point is, what are these other lookup mechanisms that we are considering? Is it just prior knowledge of the device? Are there concrete mechanisms that we are looking into? Yeah. The hardest part here probably is that IP literals also provide just a very, very limited subset of what even an A and quad A record can indicate, because a lookup for a host name can provide both an IPv4 and an IPv6 address. An IP literal can't. And an IP literal cannot transport all the other details. But literals for, or literal-ish things for other transports, for example, for BLE, can well have that encoded. They could have that encoded in the address, but they may not even need to, because that protocol might have some additional next stage discovery mechanism that is used anyway. In concrete, CoAP over GATT, for that it is sufficient to just find the BLE MAC address to talk to, because all the rest of because as part of turning GATT on, there is a discovery step anyway, and in that stage it could learn the equivalent of whether we are talking HTTP2 or HTTP3. So I think that's more of a peculiarity of IP literals, and I think that can be fixed. So what does that mean for the draft? The draft currently describes that SVCP records are something that can be used for CoAP, even though, of course, because CoAP deployments predate the introduction of SVCP records by a considerable time, it's always just a thing that you can use for enhanced service discovery. And you cannot rely on it unless you're in a particular application where the use of this is prescribed, which is perfectly fine. I mean, if someone is building their something protocol that is building on CoAP, and they say that using SVCP records is like the way to go there, and all the URI start CoAP : // even if it's eventually CoAP over TCP, that's perfectly fine. But there are details that we should consider. Particular ones I listed here. So for example, for SVCP, there are these two options. Should we have a dedicated co-op RR, or should we just take an underscore name and use underscore co-op dot whatever the name is with an SVCP record? That's one of the questions I'm not leaning in a particular direction even, so I don't know. Another question is whether we should is what precisely to put in, which service binding parameters to put data into. So co-op over TLS and co-op over DTLS already have their ALPNs. So if one is advertising that UDP that co-op over UDP is available, co-op over DTLS is available, that's perfectly easy. One can create an SVCP record and put co-op the ALPN for co-op over DTLS into the ALPN list. ALPN is a registry of TLS and is a thing introduced by TLS, but there are also records in there that are not TLS encrypted, and there are also other users already that make use of ALPNs. So it's a bit open whether we should register an ALPN for the unencrypted protocols or whether we should register a new SVCP parameter that behaves very similar to ALPN, but indicates non-application layer protocol negotiation protocols. Something I did not put in there because it's in the next block. So those are the kind of two questions that will need a decision, because all those parts are essential to making this work, especially with the way forward for having future IP-based protocol, IP-based transports that are neither co-op over UDP nor co-op over TCP. For example, a co-op over QUIC. And then there are a few parts that are currently in the document that I think just slow the document down. So one item there is that I mentioned before, there is an SVCP parameter for indicating encrypted client hello. And I think that this parameter is a good model for how we could advertise that ACE or that ad hoc can be used with that endpoint. Because DTLS is not our only way to make things encrypted, and we still want to kick off unencrypted. We want to kick off encrypted communication from like non-co-op SURIs. I think we should design parameters, but maybe that does not need to go into this document. There is an appendix telling that kind of working on related applications. I think we can just remove that. And the hardest part about this is IP literals, because from how I view the whole situation, the largest gap that remains is that an IP literal is just not expressing enough information to establish a connection well, especially when there are multiple transports involved. That already starts when there are mixed IP versions around, and that only gets worse when there is TLS around. Like it's not only us here that have the problem, but I think this hits us hardest, because for the protocols that we now have, we can just say co-op plus TCP : / some IP address, and the transport will be clear, but that will not always stay the case. And if at some point we want to express, please use co-op over, say, QUIC to connect to this or that IP address, we'll need to encode IP literals with extra service binding-ish data into some URI authority component. There is a sketch for that in this document, and I think we should pursue this. But given that there is no protocol urgently coming up and that transport indication in general is a useful thing, I would lean towards delaying this, even though it means that there is some gap that the next protocol will still need to address. provided that that protocol is even supposed to work with IP literals, which we might think is a given, but that might also be lack of imagination. So maybe I'd hope that this is something that we can delay for further action, given that there is now a rough idea of how that would look like if ever needed. Yep. I have one backup slide that is like showing how this looks, showing examples of what that proposed everything integrated expression looks like, but that's essentially a strawman proposal. So there are many ways to feed that cat, and exploring all those ways would probably take longer than I think is good for transport indication. That's it from me. Esko, do you feel like you're in a better position to answer some of those questions now?
Well, it's at least a much better position, so. Yeah, that's something I haven't actually considered so far. Maybe one question is, so you're saying about IP literals that should kind of pack all this information. Isn't that URI basically that you can use to pack all that information, or?
The thing is, URIs don't compose in the sense that you can take, so one could pack that information into a URI, say some URN-ish thing, but in order to use it to access a particular resource on that host, all that packed information needs to go into the authority component of a URI, because everything that happens basically after the third slash is, all this is homogeneous no matter what happens before that.
Right, yeah. That's the resource and query part, for example.
Yes, exactly. Resource, query, and I mean, fragment is yet further decoupled, but that's all just like all the variability is in the authority component, and in particular, the thing that should stay consistent is the URI scheme. So if it turns out that the good way of expressing an endpoint identity is to pack it into a URN, and that we then have some rules of how a URN can be packed into the authority component, that's fine with me. If that so happens to end with some.something.arper, it's also disambiguated from anything that could ever turn up in DNS, because let's face it, everyone and their dog are taking the thing of the authority component and putting it into DNS. And if there's an explicit .something.arper, you know that's not the case. Of course, that's a hell of an endian situation, because in a URN has the least significant bits to the right, and all of this, and an authority component has things the other way around. Yeah, it's some 60 years too late to change that. 50, I don't know. Anyway, any solution to that problem will probably have to address that, but starting with URNs is, to me, just as good a starting point as any other. One thing that I didn't mention here is that the big alternative to placing it under something.arper is to use the IPv future extension mechanism. So it's like // open bracket v free.urn. That would work well as well.
And what's that? URN? Free dot?
Sorry, if there was a question, it got lost in my coughing fit.
Oh, okay. Sorry, yeah, I was just wondering what URN you mentioned. So was it with 3 dots, or do you mean free dot?
I'll write it down in a minute.
Yeah, sure. Okay, I see it now. Yeah, there's also this kind of username piece of data that you can have in a URI.
Yeah, but that's already kind of deprecated and kind of doesn't look much easier than putting it in the other fields.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure that we actually can use this IPv future feature of 3.986 because the assumption there was that the whole internet is going to embrace this new IPv future. So every URI parsing library is going to be updated to do this and so on. And that's, I mean, the old saying, use it or lose it, probably works very well here. I think we have lost it.
I'm not quite sure there because whatever we do in outside of that will create very long authority parts, possibly even authority parts that are not that have components longer than 63 bytes. So it might actually be preferable to have something that breaks with some URI parsing libraries and forces the user to take a bit of a detour that then works, rather than squishing it into something where we don't know what all are the limitations of non-conforming libraries. So it might be easier to use it and break it once than play whack-a-mole with other broken things that turn up when things are put in there.
Yeah, this is, I think, one of those issues where the tail wagging the dog image comes up. So yeah, I think we should have a good solution that crams this into the existing authority somehow. So that's item number one. What I'm really interested in is not so much CoAP plus TCP. We kind of fell for this much earlier when we started to separate CoAP from CoAP-S. And I'm wondering what the future of that dichotomy is. So you are doing all this here for CoAP URIs, right?
Yes, and I'm doing this for CoAP URIs but that's really like it can the document tries hard to not play favorites. I think we can get away with just having one SVCP RR or prefix, and that might even work for both CoAP and CoAP-S schemes. My position is that adding the S was a mistake in the first place.
Yes.
And especially because our situation is unlike the HTTPS situation, where HTTPS tacitly implies that there is a particular model of how to get from the name to the expectations on security that we do not have in that universality. So this needs to be spelled out by the application anyway. What this all enables is that we can use a CoAP URI and then, by virtue of having an SVCP record, still guide the client to establish a CoAP over DTLS connection. This is what the proposed solution can already do. I don't know whether we can push people in one or the other direction of having CoAP versus CoAP-S URIs by any other means than ensuring that ad hoc is easily and workable, and just a bit confusing because when someone is saying CoAP-S and then all of a sudden the SVCP record says, no, you go unencrypted CoAP, but it's ad hoc. That's an unclear situation. And this can be avoided by stating that it's like CoAP in the first place. but I don't see this document in a position to discourage people from using co-op as explicitly.
Yeah, so basically what we could say is that whenever we have SVCB information, co-op and co-op-S are equivalent, because what made them different is overridden by the SVCB information. Is that an approach that would work?
I think that's an approach that can work. We can probably say is sorry, I took it down the minutes wrong. You said that whenever you have SVG information is the same. Co-op/S is the same, right?
Yes, and probably co-op plus TCP as well.
Yes, yes. I think that's something we can say, provided that that depends on the authority's willingness to create aliased URIs, but by just having those SVCP records around.
Well, the server is not forced to provide URIs in any of these forms. It's just that the client doesn't have to distinguish the different schemes when it has SVCB information. So the server is still free to tell it, hey, your URI here is co-op-S something.
Yes, I think that can work. So there is a bit of a caveat, because there are situations where the client is even forced to create a URI, because, for example, it's processing a multicast response. But I don't think that those overlap, because you don't get an SVCP response for an IP address. So that may be good. That may be fine already.
Yeah, I think I just suggested this so we go ahead and examine all these fine points you just made, because I think in the end this is a model that is worth aspiring to. So leaving behind that we have this 1 or 2 bits of information that we can express in the URI scheme and replace it by something that we can call SVCB information for now, but really this is information that goes with a URI in the link in some form, and how you actually do the lookup, that's another question. And that will allow us to unify all these different UI schemes.
Yeah. I think that applying this to the draft on not on multicast notifications, which is somewhere on my to-do list to think that through again, will help us identify what can all be in that additional information. And SVCP a lot of that can be expressed in SVCP. Some is additional information. So yeah, we might need to find a container that encompasses SVCP and the related information. But I should also point out here that SV service binding parameters are already used in situations that are explicitly not DNS lookups. So it has, so for example, when doing DNS, encrypted DNS server discovery, that already is transported in, I think, router advertisements and DHCP v6 options,
Right.
which are not DNS responses, and that also uses service binding parameters. So
Good.
It's already becoming just like ALPNs, SVCP is already becoming a thing beyond DNS and TLS.
Yeah, and we have the link format link as a way we can put this together in a way that can map to various ways of doing this.
Yeah, but the link format link, in order to express it well in a link format link, we'll need something like the transporting, of packing that all that information into a URI. we can take a shortcut for situations where we are not bound by link format. So for example, in Coral, it may well make sense to encode that information not in a URI, but in a literal. That is then some CBOR object encapsulating the same information, but that is not an option for the general model. And I would view that more as an optimization for expressing that information in the sense equivalent to having a compressed CRI, like a customarily encoded CRI.
Yeah, I think that the most important thing is that we actually have a clear model of what that information is, and don't entangle that model with the various representation formats that we may need to come up with. And that will allow us to get some independence from weird representation decisions in various spaces.
Yeah. What I can contribute to the discussion right now, based on what I've already looked at, what we need in there is that this set is not just what we can have in SVCB parameters. So that is definitely part of this. This is also address records. And I think that TLSA records could also go in there. So in a sense, it's a lot of information that can be packed in various records that are coming back through DNS, SVCB being the most flexible of them, but not exclusive there. So yeah, that piece, that set of information pieces can maybe help us get to an understanding of how we describe it. So do I take that right, that this would make a good step here to move this a bit apart from the service B parameters, which it really is not already, but it's phrased that way, and come up with a concrete proposal of how do we describe the set of things that you need to start having a connection?
Yep. So my mind is calling this thing a link, and the URI is just part of that. And there is other information that is needed to actually follow that link. And that is, of course, against the whole idea of URIs, but that's because URIs are somewhat ossified, and you.
But that's a thing that we can that's a gap that we can close as soon as we have a way of putting the whole thing into that link again by finding an expression for the authority component. But that can only happen well after we've identified what we have in there.
Yeah. Correct.
So that, to me, that sounds like a plan forward. The open questions still need pondering on SVCB and like what do we put in where. But maybe that can also happen like on a mailing list, or like now that the better overview is out.
Thank you, Christian. Any more question or comment? Okay. Karsten, do you think we can continue like we have now in the agenda, or do you want to take advantage of Christian that may leave at some point for things related to the CoreClar PR, for example?
Yeah, I think it would be good to quickly talk about the CoreClar PR. So that Martin isn't here today. So I'm wondering which of the other items.
That's the second from last CoreClar, at least.
Yeah. Yeah. So as I said on the mailing list, I noticed that PR number 40 was kind of stuck because nobody felt like they should be finishing it. So I felt like I should be finishing it. And I have merged it and put it into the -1 document, and that's the only difference along with reference updates. So you can, if you want to know what happened, not having followed the PR number 40 discussion, just look at the internet draft diff that is in the link that was sent out by the Secretariat. So the result of this discussion again got stuck, so it's not perfect, but I think it's definitely good enough, in particular to be referenced from other documents. So my recommendation would be to fix this in DNS over CoAP, but nobody is here who can do this right now. And my request would be for people to actually review the Internet Draft Diff and yeah, send comments on the mailing list, or send create new issues, or create a PR, whatever is the best way to react what you find in that diff. So I think this is all that we will do about Calcula this year, and next year, of course, we have other interims, and we'll move forward with other issues than the issue 39. This was closing.
Thanks for replying that. I can't promise to update DNS or CoAP soonish, but it will be updated.
Good.
There was a mail from Martina before, or when we started the meeting. So apparently the new reference is in the editor's copy already, and that'll be part of version 10.
Okay.
When we approach Working Group Plus call. So yeah, we have it.
Good.
Thanks, Carsten. And I guess that's going to be pretty much for today on Core, right?
Correct.
All right.
Unless somebody wants to bring up something.
Sure. If none, then let's move up in the order. Yeah, I think ESCO at that point, I believe, for checking mostly with Carsten on the group combis document. You want to say anything, ESCO?
Yeah, I think the plan from the IETF meeting was to have a second working group plus call due to the many changes that were occurred after the review we processed from Christian. And then we could, including in that last call, everyone could check, one final time if their previous comments are all included. So that's from Christian, I think, and Carsten as well.
Yes.
That was the idea. So, but we should kick that off, that process, or issue the last call. Maybe not just before Christmas, but in the new year.
So, do we have the update based on Christian's comments?
Yeah, so what did we do with it? I think we made an update and published a new version with that.
Yeah, what was presented in Dublin already included the comments from Christian.
Okay.
So yeah, that's, I think, already in that respect.
So we are looking at -12, right?
Sounds right. Yes.
I also check. 12 is latest, yeah.
Okay, I kind of had in my mind that we're still waiting for someone, for something in response to Christian's comments, or maybe I misunderstood this. Yeah, in that case, let's do the second working plus call. I think I can do my Shepherd check during the working plus call. I don't expect there to be major things that need to be changed at this point in time. And it's good to see that we are down to something like 60 pages on the main body of the document, plus some 30 pages or 25 pages without the document updates of appendixes. So one of my objectives was fulfilled here. Yeah, I think we are having this problem of generating too much informational content in our documents. Of course, there never can be too much, but at some point it just becomes too heavy. and we need to find a way to handle this. But for this document, I think we have pretty much converged. So what kind of handling do we want to do for the holidays? Do we just stop the clock for the 2 holiday weeks, or is there another way to handle this?
Yeah, that depends on the habits of people, if they like to read internet drafts under the Christmas tree or not. I can say. So
well, I
usually
can say
it's-
that my next IETF meeting is on Monday the 30th at 9 a.m.
Okay.
Yeah, so if we just stop the clock during week 52 and week 1, then we would have a deadline somewhere in week 2, like Wednesday the 8th. And then we would still have a few days before the next interim meeting to actually make any changes that are needed. So that seems to make sense. Any comments on that?
Yeah, it's okay for me.
That's good.
Great.
Thank you. Okay, the next item is general information, and you should have noticed something happening already. The chairs wanted to update the milestones, first of all, and in the process of doing that, we noticed the status of DTLS ALPN was standards track. That, of course, raises also the burden and the work on the ISG later on. So we also checked with Francesca, and since the document was really only about the IANA registration, informational is more appropriate and simplifies things on the way. So the authors were very fast and submitted already a new version with the new intended status informational. We have created new milestones that are under the approval review for Francesca, so they should appear anytime soon. And the intended deadline for this document and for consistency also for DNS over co-op is also February 2025 at the moment. So that should be reasonable for both of them as for publication request. Yeah, so we should see the approval of the milestones anytime soon, and they'll rectify this change of intended status completely. Okay, but that was basically just information, and the next item is still related to DNS over co-op in a sense for the resource type that Esko brought up.
Yeah, while we are talking about milestones, we might have some impact on the milestones for DNS over co-op based on the IPR decision that the working group needs to take on this. I sent this little missive to the mailing list, and it's really ugly that we cannot have this discussion in the usual open way, or at least that's how I perceive things. I just got a message from the CFRG mailing list where people are dissecting patents and patent claims to a document in lots of detail. So apparently you can do this in a different way as well. But I already have had my discussion with Dan Bernstein about whether this is a good way of doing things. But as long as nobody actually says they cannot do this, the CFRG process actually can create clarity. So I think one important question is, do we have working group members who really have to leave the room when we discuss patents because of the legal issues that I mentioned in my email? And if we do agree that nobody has this problem, then we might go to a more open way of handling this. But right now, I'm really suggesting that people talk to their lawyers if they have any, and create a corporate view of whether this specification would be implementable for their organization based on the patent claims that are out there, and use this information to make a decision how to actually how do you say that? I want to avoid the word vote. How to provide feedback on the working class call that is upcoming. And if we find that a lot of people have problems with this, then we probably have to get back to the drawing board and look for a way to work with this. But that hasn't happened yet. And yeah, so there is information that people can take from that IPR disclosure, in particular if you correct the EP number that is in the IPR disclosure, that you have to replace the last 0 by an A to find the actual current patent number. Yeah, so that's all I really want to say about that. But it really requires doing some homework. And I'm, of course, not going to reveal what my view on this. I do have a view on this, which I will voice when we actually have the working class call, but not earlier.
Just a bit for clarification. If everyone like was happy with the situation as is, and clearly nobody talked about this whole IPR situation at all during the working group last call, but then at the working group last call, with people apparently having read everything that was said about that document, they still say, I support this document for working group publication. Is there anything more we have to do? I mean, sure, if there are people that say like, I don't know whether I can support this, or if they say anything else, yeah, but is the fact that you mentioned this and then people might still say it's a good thing to publish, is that enough already?
Yeah, I think that we can document both from our email and from this little piece of meeting that we have pointed out that this is part of the position that everybody will need to take here. And by the way, I would not be happy if somebody says, I don't know whether we can support that. I would be much happier if people would do the homework to be able to say,
Yeah, sure.
I do know that this doesn't work for us, or I do know that this is not an impediment to going forward. But they don't have to even say that. They just have to say at the working class call time that they support this document going forward, and maybe add some technical reasons for that as well, or how they intend to use it, or whether they have implemented it, and so on. That's always good in a working class call.
Christian, I think you described the situations where all in all the working group agrees to proceed. And thanks a lot for the good mail, Karsten. It's really instructive.
Yeah, it also taught me a lot, even though as a working group chair, I should really know all these things, but obviously I did.
Okay, the notes are now under resource type. I think we can move the heading down a little bit. Thanks. Yeah, and for me, this also means we cannot have the working class call tomorrow we have to, or at least we would have to extend it a little bit. We have to make some time for people to talk to the lawyers or whatever they are going to use as an information resource here. So we are not going to working class call this week. But we will have a little bit more time. But of course, we also should try to get this done within January so we can push this ahead. Yeah. Okay, that's all I wanted to add here, so we can maybe move to the resource type discussion. So Thomas is there. Fine.
Hi, Thomas.
Hello. Hi, thank you.
Esko, you don't have slides on the resource type, right? Just material from mails.
Yeah, so I think we could show the last email I sent with the example. I can share it here if you want, or
Please do.
what works. Shall I do it myself?
Please do.
Yeah, then I'll just ask to share screen. Let's see how that works. Accept. Okay, then I have to select the screen still. Okay, I'm sharing this screen over here, which shows the minutes. Good.
If you can increase the font size by about 25 steps, that would be good.
Oh, okay, I hope it works for that. These are some examples. Let's see. Should also have an increased font size. Then I'll just see if I make it very large. This is better, I think.
Yes.
You can all read it now. So yeah, this is, let's see, by means of the examples, it's probably the best thing to explain. So I'm not even sure if this is kind of relevant for the current DNS over co-op draft, but I was just seeing it as a kind of low-hanging fruit, basically, because there is this protocol that is called SRP, Service Registration Protocol, and that actually uses exactly the DNS language, basically. So it makes use of DNS updates to send information to a server, and that lets the client register its own services. And that's all in DNS SD format. And there's now a draft basically in the final stage of RFC editing. So that's the SRP draft. And it's from the DNS SD working group. And that basically describes how to do these updates, and also has some very lightweight security mechanism associated to it. So the idea was, well, if you can advertise, hey, this co-op resource supports DNS, you might as well advertise, hey, this co-op resource also supports doing SRP. So that means that the client already knows, like, okay, I can send my updates there. And because basically the format used is exactly DNS encoding, it's exactly the same, only a subset of it is used. So that's why I thought, well, maybe it fits in this draft to register also a type for that. It could be in a separate draft, but then, yeah, you have to write a separate document, of course. And I think this could also be discussed in the DNS SD working group. So there was a comment from Ted about that. And that seems also fair to raise it there. And now going back to the example, I think you can see there, that's a link format example. So there are two resources advertised, R and Q. So R is for registering services, has its own type, and the Q is for querying DNS. This could be normal DNS queries and could also include DNS SD queries specifically for the registered services. Or you could do DNS SD queries on the internet or whatever. That's quite flexible. Yeah, maybe the first question is, so is this something that would fit in DNS over co-op? I think Karsten had some reply already to that.
So I haven't looked at the thread before. My gut feeling is that generally it does fit, but we'll have to be careful that because the co-op over DNS over co-op intentionally does a few things differently than DNS over HTTP, and we'll have, if we just say, and by the way, this HTTP service can kind of be equivalently mapped to co-op. I will have to see whether these differences apply here. Gut feeling is they don't, because the main differences are that we fetch rather than post or get, and this would be a post probably anyway, and that our lifetimes are related to the max age, which we don't have here either. So probably it's fine, but this step will definitely need a bit of careful double checking. If that all works out, I think it would be convenient to have it in there so that SRP can be updated easily over co-op. Yeah. And I suppose that if a service decides to implement both at the same resource, that's just equally fine, right? Because there's no conflict, and both core.srp and core.dns could be implemented in the same resource or a different one up to the server implementation.
Yeah. Oh, that's by the way the second example. So it's this one here in the middle. You see one resource that implements both here. And this is SRP is here added as a kind of signal to the client to say, okay, you can register here. It's kind of an early indication, like, okay, you can register here. Like for an IoT device that typically will only contact the DNS to basically register its service and not for other reasons. So this is what, for example, Matter over Thread devices currently do. So the ones that have a service will, for example, register it and then not do anything more. They will just wait for some other device to, like a controller, to find the service and use it. But yeah, one good point is maybe that for co-op over DNS, I'm not sure what was exactly considered in scope there. So there's the normal everyday DNS queries that you can do, and of course sending DNS updates to change something that's quite different from just doing queries. So maybe this is worth checking indeed, like you said, Christian, like how do all the things with indeed lifetimes and options that are used, how does that all fit in? Because SRP relies on using specific DNS options also.
Yeah, specific DNS options would be fine.
Yeah, I think so too. But,
yeah, I think the important observation here is that probably a lot of us haven't spent one thought about using DNS update over over DNS over co-op.
Yeah.
And we have to sharpen our review of that aspect, and we need to find out, did anybody actually implement this? Because if we open a completely new box here, that might lead to some delays.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I think the motivation for putting this in here is that the core dot something namespace is under IETF review, so we actually have to have an RFC, an IETF stream RFC actually. And since we are just submitting one, we might as well put it in here. Right. But on the other hand, we probably need a little bit of text that actually explains what's going on here. At least a reference to 9665, which is in the auth 48 stage right now. So we can hope that it doesn't become another delaying factor. Unfortunately, it has been stuck in auth 48 for 2.5 months. Right. So my usual optimism is a little bit slowed down here, but I think we still should be able to be the second in line here. So yeah, to summarize, we need to do the review work. There's a little bit of risk that we actually find something that would make us want to change something. Now, this may be a good thing if the thing we want to change actually makes sense in general. This would be a bad thing if we don't manage to figure out what it is, because it's really the lookup use case that this work was done for. So yeah, I wouldn't even be unhappy with taking DNS update completely out of this document if that allows us to finish it, and then we would have a second document with DNS update and SRP in it later. So that might be one outcome, but of course not the one we want to have.
It could be, yes, that's right. Yeah, because I also didn't check for support of updates in DNS over co-op, and there's also not an implementation that I'm aware of course. So if that's required, then there could be another barrier, right? That if you want to have some proof that it works, then somebody has to do that, of course. Could be a reason to delay to another document also. But on the other hand, doing the check now and see if the protocol is ready to handle updates, that would be probably useful. Whatever the outcome is, at least we know that.
Yeah, heads off, I completely agree.
Yeah.
But as a working group chair, I need to point out the risks.
Right. Yeah. Thanks for that.
Good.
Right. Yeah, maybe I can take a look into more detail into the co-op over DNS, how it works and how that SRP updates would fit in there. Because I did not do that yet, so in detail, just raise this idea, but that's it.
Great.
Okay. Yep.
So in
Thank
case
you for bringing this up.
Thank you, Esko. In case this has to be factored in before working group last call, right? Preferably.
Yeah, that's right. So, given the time planning, it needs to be fairly quick. So under the Christmas tree, maybe.
Yeah, then practically, I believe a PR on the GitHub would help as a concrete proposal.
Right, yeah. I think so too.
Okay, cool. Thanks. And next in the lines are, well, Esko and Thomas. And for this, we have slides.
Right, yeah, stop the screen share now. And I will present the slides. And let's see, then I need to ask for slides, I think. Yeah. Ask slides. All right, this is the one. And then I need to press somewhere, I guess. Or do you have to approve, Marco?
Didn't I already? You have the control.
No, maybe it is.
You still have to choose the slide set, probably.
I did. Oh, it becomes a blue bar, but maybe I have to press somewhere.
Take over control and give it. Oh, I cannot take control back. Interesting. Now I had.
Okay, so yep.
What about now?
Confirm you. Oh, now I have a. Okay. Oh, the button was. I see. The button was not showing because Meet Echo shows another thing on top. I'm on a very small monitor here.
It works.
Right, now it works.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Well, okay, the button was exactly hidden by the controls on the bottom. Yeah. All right, so this is about the new draft that Thomas and I have created, basically. And that was in response to a problem that I think Thomas raised at the last IETF meeting. So for the co-op contents formats registry, we have the first come, first served assignment for certain numbers, so 10,000 and higher. And yeah, Thomas mentioned that this can lead to problems as already occurred. So there can be media type registered there that do not actually exist as media types, and they get a co-op content format number. And that was not the intention of this registry. So it should be actually existing media type. So what we did so far as a first fix, you see the note here that was with the red box that was added. So there's the possibility to add notes if the AD and the expert agrees. So this is done now. So it says that the validity of the combination of these items that you have to put in your registration, that will be checked prior to assignment. But we want to have some more detail there. So next is the aim to do an update RFC to update these procedures that are listed on the bottom here. Okay, now just jump to the next slide, go to some detail about the problems that can be there. So the problems are in the middle. So you see an example on the right where the media type is unknown. So you have the application / unknown plus CBAR. So that's an unknown media type. And yeah, that should not go through the registry with first come, first served. So there should be someone checking this. So I think Ayana could in principle do very basic checks like, okay, does it exist in the registry? What we found some other cases where it becomes a bit harder to check. So it could be that a parameter is used in the registration, but the parameter is unknown or not defined for that particular media type. So it would also be good to filter out those cases. Also, you could have parameter values that are invalid, like instead of a number, it's a string or whatever, or the other way around. And if we look at number 4, then we see for the second column, content coding could also be any string listed there, which is in fact invalid. So that would also be good to check or know that the content coding exists. And finally, you could have various type of duplicate entries. So you can have duplicates, not just literally with a string, but you could have one media type not listing parameters, which then default to default values. And another person registers the media type with parameters and fills in the default value. So they look different as a string, but effectively are still the same type. And then you generally want to avoid duplicate registrations for the exact same thing. Yeah, the same thing you could have with the content coding. So these are some problems we've identified and also listed in the draft just to document that. All right, then this is the final slide. So with the proposed update to the procedure. So I copied this from what we have in the draft now. This can still be adapted, of course. And the text in red is then what is new. So there is a range proposed with some text in brackets behind that to kind of describe a case. So if you register in the 10,000 plus range, then there are 2 cases now basically. So yeah, so one case is the easy case. So this is first come, first served. So if you have no parameters, there's an empty content coding and the media type is not yet used anywhere in this registry. Well, then it's a simple case, so that will always be valid if the corresponding media type registration exists. So this is something that Ayana could check. And there's a note on the right saying that the media type has to be there. And the second case is the more difficult cases if there are parameters and or content coding in there. So then it goes to the expert review, which is a lightweight review described in this draft as well. So there should be then no kind of checking for what's normally done for the IETF ranges, so below 10,000. But it can be a very lightweight review, just looking for correctness with respect to those mistakes that we have listed. So there's a procedure for that in the draft also to state what has to be checked. Yeah, I think this summarizes everything. So maybe Thomas, you have some addition as well to this.
Not really. Thanks, Esko, for making a perfect and concise presentation. So I just wanted to thank everyone who helped out putting the document together and refining the contents. I mean, this converged pretty quickly, and I think it's now in more than decent shape. So. Clearly, so we want this to progress as soon as possible, of course, because this comes from the RAS working group, right, where we are anticipating some pressure on the registry in the next few months, years. But as soon as this is done, the sooner this is done, the better for that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I think most of the Ds are now in the loop, right? Esko, of course, and Karsten and Jaime have been, notified, and Karsten has provided many rounds of reviews already, and Ayana too. So we have the note, as Esko said, and also Amanda has been contributing prose and reviews all over. So it's not super critical that we get, this to an RFC state, but yeah, it's better to to get it done as quick as possible.
Yeah, that's right.
So you mentioned that Amanda has made comments on this. Did she see this latest split of the 10,000 range into FCFS and expert?
Yeah.
Good.
Thanks for all the work. And yeah, the draft was in adoption call until yesterday or a few hours ago, if you think anywhere on Earth. So I think we can very safely adopt it. And yeah, let's announce it right after this meeting. And as usual, we'll set up a co-working group GitHub to work on there. And I think Karsten had a PR on the latest individual submission version. Can we just postpone the processing of that on the adopted version directly, or did you want to discuss that today, Karsten?
No, I just wanted to suggest that the -00 will be the one we had in the adoption call, and then the authors go right ahead and do a -01 with those updates, because this is really just editorial.
Perfect. Just one question. When we migrate the repo to the core working group, do the PRs, the pending PRs, get migrated as well, or is there any? Okay, so that's absolutely easy.
To transfer the repo, I think.
So which repo are these in right now?
Thomas Fossati, draft core, CF reg.
So I think the best way to do this is just to make you an owner of the core working group repository briefly, and then you can push it over. And the nice thing is that even after the move, the old references will still work. So somebody at GitHub really did his homework on this feature.
Okay, cool. Excellent. So let me know when I need to push the buttons, and I'll do that.
Yep.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, we still have a few more minutes for the wiki topic, and Christian commented already in the chat that he supports the migration to wiki IETF, can contribute, just not right now. But I think you had more details in mind, Esko.
Yeah, maybe I can share my screen again. So we have 5 minutes probably, or less. I don't know, a few minutes.
They shouldn't kick us out, I hope.
Okay, I can stay a little bit longer. That's okay. Let's see. Okay, no screen share. Did it actually share or not? No, not yet. Stop slide.
You need to stop. Yeah, exactly.
Then stop screen share. Ask to share screen again.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Okay, now I'm showing it. So this is the, I already made an update here of the core wiki just to show what it should be like or was going to be like. I kept some of the content there. You might want to review, you can even see, I think on GitHub what disappeared, what I removed. So yeah, so this is just to go over the entire structure. This is the core working group wiki in the IETF community wiki space. So you can quite easily find it if you do in the search engine IETF community wiki. You get to the main page and then you can link easily to the working groups. And there's some content here on the right, the different headings of items that you can navigate. So this starts with explaining the use of version control, that we use GitHub here. Some info about the way of working, and there's a status which was very old, so I replaced it just by a link to the data tracker documents for people who might stumble upon this wiki and then don't know that much about IETF. Can be guided to the right place, so you can see what RFCs and drafts are there. Yeah, there's the section on external sites and tools, so this is where a wiki would be useful for. I know there's co-op.me and there was co-op.technology, which seems to be not working anymore. Is that right? Or I'm not sure. The last time I checked, it didn't work.
Yeah, it's co-op.space now.
Ah, okay, so that can be updated to co-op.space then. Okay. Let's see, do we need a larger font, by the way, for this one, or is this okay?
Well, I just opened the page on my laptop. So
Oh, you can edit. Yeah, well, this is the part I added here. So this is a chunk of text here, some more information that I wanted to keep about the core IANA registry. So this is any information that is not currently in RFCs or drafts that I know about, that was discussed. And it's also not in the registry. So, and I put a note here that all this stuff is to be confirmed by the core working group. That's on one of the reasons to raise it here as well, so you can maybe offline take a look at it, if that's okay. And this just lists a few things that we want to keep about the registry. So for content formats, I have this idea that was discussed on the core parameters mailing list, is that there will be a sub-range kind of reserved for now, just to do some experiment about automatic content format ID assignment. So we can keep it for that, reserved for that for the time being. And there is the other request was coming from KNX about basically listing their interface descriptions somewhere in a public way, so that people could be guided to the specifications, basically. So I made for that, we discussed this before, so I made for that a new page. So this is known URIs used in core protocol. So that's the separate page that you can go to. Just open it in a new tab. So this is basically listing known URI namespaces, includes URNs, just to point people who might stumble upon this to, well, where this is used, basically. Here's just an example here because there's nothing there, and here's a list of the specific things that KNX raised, like, hey, we are using these types. So if you are analyzing network communication or whatever, and you see these things popping up and search for it, you could end up here and then look up what they're used for. Or if you're looking to reuse a certain device type or interface type, you might look in those two tables here. So we can keep that kind of up to date as a hobby or best effort way, basically. That's the idea of this. And then if that's okay, then I can also report back to Wouter from KNX, like, okay, we added this here. You can take a look. Okay, and then finally, the last two parts of the
Before you go
wiki
back,
page. Yeah,
um,
sure.
the on the known URIs, the reference for the table 2 and table 3 also is schema.knx.org. Or
Yeah.
would I have to look at a different place?
Yeah, this is basically all URN KNX is basically documented here. It's not super clear what document you have to open, but I think links are there to all the relevant documents you can access basically, and that holds for the whole table basically here. Yeah.
Okay, so we can't have a deep link, but we have to download files and rummage around in them.
Yeah, that's right. Maybe not even download, but view online. Some cases, yeah, or part download.
Well, if they are online, we can provide deep links.
Oh, yeah, I'm not sure. I think yeah, we have to check because they didn't give deep links in this table, so I don't want to spend too much time on that, of course.
Yep.
And, I did not myself actually find the clear one place where this is all these things are defined. So they are appearing a bit all over the place, but it was not immediately clear if there's one place where you have to link to the one and only definition. And they use a sort of abbreviation method. So for their own documents, they leave out URN : KNX : so they just use shorthands like if.ll.
Okay.
And the URN is supposed to be put in front of that by the reader. That's how they do it. Okay.
Thanks.
Yeah, so this is kind of to keep an overview, and maybe there are other SDOs that define these things, and then if we know about them, we can add them here. But so far, I didn't see that much. Yeah, I just if there's some time left, I just want to mention these final things. So we had this core agile backlog that was already very old, included all kinds of work that was already done. So I still kept it in here, but I was thinking that maybe we don't need that because we have other ways of keeping track of work that we need to do. Just to show, this was kind of the format that was used. So you have a work item, a priority, and some status information. I just put 2 items in here just as an example.
Yeah, mostly the chairs would add a document to the documents of interest to this working group. I forget how Data Tracker actually calls it. So the working group documents page really should be showing the most recent status. The only problem with that is it's not always clear for an expired document whether that is still alive or not. So that is some information which would be nice to capture somewhere.
Yeah, but on the other hand, we worked for years without using this, so my guess is that we don't really need that part, the agile backlog. But
we don't. I think external users might be good to be able to point to something.
Yeah, and there was also some historic information there that was actually quite a big part of the wiki, was plug test information of all events. So I made now a kind of summary here and kept the links, although I'm not sure if it's still interesting in this 10 years later to read about plug test results then, but okay, this is some historic information. We might as well delete it, but I decided to keep it at the bottom here for now. Didn't want to be too destructive here, and there might be other content that's useful for here. So that was the migration that was mentioned earlier. So there's also a wiki, another wiki at the core GitHub. So we have some information there that could just be migrated to here. I did not check that yet, but yeah, that could be useful.
Yeah, I think it's important that this page is a good landing page.
Yeah.
And if we want to keep historic information somewhere, that we might as well do this on GitHub. I don't know what is better here. Or we could add another page here.
Yeah, well, you
Um,
can create pages also with historic information, and you link to it from the main page. So that's
Right.
also an option. And you can also go multiple levels deep, so you can create more pages from pages, etc. Yeah.
So, Kirsten, I think we can review the current content in the IETF Wiki and GitHub Wiki with the idea of migrating the content to the IETF Wiki,
Okay.
right? Yeah, there's probably something to refine or to delete, but I think in principle it's better if we have things in one place only, ideally, and in the IETF Wiki. It feels more appropriate, at least.
Well, I could at least use this one very well, so I did not have any issues with it. And you can also choose, apparently you can choose your format for a new page. So instead of Markdown, you could also go for ASCII doc, which is quite different format. But I decided to stay with Markdown because that's the most
Good decision.
common one used for wikis.
I mean, the point about wikis is that many people can work on them. And
Yeah.
as much as I love ASCII doc, I spent a lot of the zero decade of this century working with ASCII doc. More people know Markdown.
That's right. Yeah, I think so too. So that's why I also choose Markdown here. Yeah, but yeah, it's good to review, I think, so that we can have a look at all these items and see what needs to be transferred, if anything, or linked to it. That's also fine.
Well, the GitHub Wiki can at least have a link to the IETF Wiki.
Yeah,
Just
right.
in
So
case.
that's like a landing page. Like, okay, this is not the newest. Go to there, basically. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, then let's give a first pass just to have a better feeling of the content around, and then we'll move it piece by piece.
Okay. Yeah, that's fine for me.
Thanks for starting this.
Yep. Okay.
I think we consumed all the agenda now. Even
Good.
though
And we're 7 minutes over time.
it's an extra minutes. Any more AOB, anyone? Well, if none, just a reminder that we resume with the interim meetings on January 15. Yeah, the odd weeks. And then every other Wednesday at the same time. Altina IETF 122. Thanks a bunch to Christian and Ricard for taking notes. Happy holidays, everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah, same
And you too.
Thank you. Happy holidays.
Thank you all.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.